San Jose Sharks. But my nutrition specialist who works with me and who lives out in the Bay Area is Ryan Thomason, and I'll let her introduce herself, but she's gonna present a lot of the slides tonight. I'm going to bookend both ends and then here for questions too. We get a little sciencey tonight. Don't be scared on that. Like, be excited because we're not going to just give you the basics. So as you guys go into the holiday season, I think this is really ironic because we're talking about keeping healthy over the holidays and like how to keep your health up so that your performance and all your goals don't go sideways, even if you're traveling. Some of you are competing. I'm sick, so it's pretty awesome. I
Perfect.
get to listen to my own advice tonight. And so my fellow colleague Jenna, who is part of A4 Health and works with the Wild and Timberwolves, she's super sick too. So we were both laughing at the irony of talking about it is really important and it's really tough when you're traveling and you're an athlete and you're doing all this competition. So I know you're going to learn new information tonight. I'm excited to have Ryan share most of that. I'm going to share the presentation now. I say that, I don't know why Zoom always
Wait,
gets
do
me. Um, and here we go. If for questions too, we're gonna leave time for questions and use the chat. Like if you forget what your question is, I always do, just get into the chat and do that. You don't have to wait till the end to start writing your questions. So anyway, so we're gonna start this. Thumb up, Ryan, if you can see the slides.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So keeping performance healthy over the holidays. Again, I'm Christina Meyer-Jacks and founder of A4 Health, work with the San Jose Sharks. So does Ryan. So she's going to introduce herself in a second. This is me and Jenna. You guys have seen this slide several times. We both do a huge amount of things. I've been working with Olympic athletes over the last little bit too, so that's pretty exciting. I'm going to start working with canoe athletes. So we're here, we're in it. We're in it for whatever sport you're in and whatever goals you have. But today, let's focus on how do we keep ourselves healthy over the holidays. So Ryan, take it away and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Christina. Hi, guys. Nice to meet you. Like Christina said, my name's Ryan. I work with her fueling the San Jose Sharks and San Jose Barracuda. So that's kind of my main thing right now. So working with a lot of hockey athletes, but I myself am a volleyball athlete. So I went to San Jose State. I played 5 years of collegiate volleyball. So my background in athletics is pretty extensive. So today I'm hoping to give you guys the knowledge that I have and view it from that lens of, you know, being in your shoes and knowing how challenging it can be to be a young athlete and trying to juggle all these things and then getting sick. So like Christina said, we are going to talk a little bit about like what causes the immune system to go haywire. You know, we'll get into a little bit of the why because I think it's important, but then we'll also give you guys some practical tips and it won't be too sciencey. But yeah, nice to meet you guys and looking forward to it. Okay, so just like a high level, what we're going to discuss today, how the immune system works. We're going to talk a little bit about stress. And then when we talk about nutrition for the immune system, gut health is pretty much the key. So we're going to touch on that pretty heavily. So, you know, gut health is pretty popular. There's a lot of buzzing words around there. We'll dive into what's important. So pre and probiotics. And I know Christina will back me on this. We really believe in food first. So there's a lot of supplements out there. There's a lot of things, products, you know, for gut health, but we really believe that food should be the number one source of any nutrients that we talk about today. And then if necessary, we'll talk about supplementation, and then I'll give you guys some travel tips, snacks, and things like that. So yeah, we can move forward. All right. So what is the immune system? Obviously, we've heard of it before, but I want you to think of it, you know, because we're all athletes, think of it like a team, right? It's your body's defense team. It's what's going to protect you from anything harmful that comes into contact with your body. So germs, viruses, bacteria, you name it, your immune system's responsible for getting rid of it. On the next slide, I'll talk about there's two different branches of the immune system, which we'll talk lightly on. So we've got the innate or the non-specific. This is the immune system that our body is born with. And then we have the adaptive, which is more specialized. You can think of it as it's able to remember certain things that might affect your immune system. And then I'm not going to go over the entire roster. I called it a roster because we're all athletes here. So you can think of each of these organs, cells, tissues, molecules as a team that makes up the immune system. But like I said, not going to dive too deep into it. Just know that there's a lot that goes into keeping you healthy. All right, go ahead and move to the next one.
I'm so trying to. There we go. Know what it's doing.
All right, guys. So, like I said, there's two different immune systems. So, the innate is that natural immunity. So, it's what we come into this world with. You can think of it like physical barriers, like your skin, the mucus lining in your noses can help to protect you from pathogens. And then there's also chemical barriers, like your stomach acid. But then we also have the adaptive immunity. So, if the innate immunity fails or it's not strong enough to basically fight off a certain pathogen or germ that comes into your body, we also have the adaptive immunity, which is more specialized. And you can think of it as it's able to remember certain things that your body has come into contact with. And the next time it comes into contact with, it'll remember how to fight it off better to protect you. And this is why it's called adaptive, because it gets stronger over time. In the cases of vaccines, this is where we see adaptive immunity being really important, because it's where our body's learning to fight off that disease state, and then we become stronger when our body comes into contact with it in the future. So just high level understanding of what the immune system is, what it does, and then now we'll kind of talk more about how we can strengthen it. All right, so first, before we can talk about that, we got to talk about stress, right? So if you look at this graph here, this photo, stress can come at us from all angles. That's not why we're here today. But when we think about how does stress affect immunity, what I want you to understand is that when stress is increased, right, which is it's inevitable, right? That's going to increase our stress hormone cortisol, right? Most of us have probably heard of cortisol before. When cortisol is raised for too long of a period of time, that's going to decrease the immune function or block it entirely. So our body's going to be less effective at fighting off any illness we have. So in the case for you guys, when you're about to go jet off home, or you're going on travel trips for Christmas, right? Know that that is a stressful activity, right? Traveling in and of itself. And on top of that, if you're exercising, right before you're leaving, and then you're going to exercise when you're at home, exercise does cause stress. It is a physical stressor on the body. And this isn't me saying that you have to exercise less, right? A lot of times that's out of our control. But just know that the issues that come with having too much stress are when we're not recovering properly. And when I think of recovery, it's more than just sitting and doing a Theragun or, those Normatec boots, right? It's nutrition is recovery, because that is us internally recovering our body. So yeah, we can move slides here. Thank you. So when we talk about, I think I said this in the beginning, when we talk about immune health and how can we eat for strengthening the immune system, the answer is in our gut. So 70% of our immune system lives in the gut. When I saw that, I was like, well, I'll repeat that. 70% of your immune system is in your gut. So those specialty team that's fighting off infection is in your gut. So that is something we can target with proper nutrition, right? So the first thing is immune defense. So when we are eating in a way that supports our gut, we're going to have stronger immune defense. And when we're eating in a way that is
They wanted their 900.
supporting our gut, inflammation is also going to be controlled. So how can nutrition help you with this? The first two things I'm going to suggest are high fiber diet, and also fermented foods. So when we eat fiber, a thing happens in our body where we break down the fiber, but not entirely, and we produce what's called a short chain fatty acid. And these are really beneficial at blocking that inflammation that comes from being sick and also from the exercise that you guys do all the time, right? So on the next slide, go ahead and change. Thank you. You might be asking, well, how can I increase my microbiome's diversity, right? That's the key here when it comes to gut health. We want a diverse set of microbes in our body. And the best thing I can recommend to increase that diversity is just eat a lot of different things. So long gone are the days where we're eating, chicken, broccoli, rice every single day, right? There's people do that, right? I see why, but when we're talking about gut health, that's really going to put us at a disadvantage. We want to make sure we're eating I think, when I say 30 plus plant foods a week, that might sound lofty if you're like, well, I don't eat, that many. Set the goal a little lower, 10 plus foods a week, and then work your way up. But the other piece to that puzzle is, if you're eating a diverse amount of plants, check the color of the food, right? So if you can make sure that there are different colors, right? Like a red bell pepper and an orange sweet potato, as opposed to, all green. Because each color represents a different nutrient that is going to strengthen the gut and the immune system. And like I mentioned, it'll produce those short chain fatty acids, which are very crucial for a healthy gut. The last thing I'll say on microbiome diversity is be mindful of antibiotic usage. Trust that your doctor is probably prescribing them for a good reason, but just know that this wipes out microbiome diversity. So if this is something that you do have to take because you got sick, just make sure to talk to Christina or someone in your life that knows how to properly reintroduce good bacteria if you do have to take antibiotics. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit more about how we can boost our immunity. And the reason I put air quotes around boost is because you can't actually boost immunity. And if you do hear that word, know that it's kind of just catchy nutrition buzzword. But if we are talking about boosting immunity, that's usually responsive to the adaptive immunity that I mentioned. All right. So a few things here. The first one, you guys have probably heard of prebiotics, probiotics. I'll touch on it briefly, but we just want to make sure we have a good balance of that bacteria. So this is kind of, a synonym for what I just said on that last slide. But basically, probiotics are the actual bacteria in our body. So we want a lot of different probiotics. And then the prebiotics is what's going to feed those bacteria in and of itself. So this is going to promote their growth and make them more active, which is what we want, because they all serve different purposes in the body. And then if you're on your phone or if you're on your computer, maybe take a screenshot. Here's some good examples of prebiotics. Recommendation would be 2 to 3 servings per day, especially if you are getting sick or you're gearing up for travel, because we want to prep the body for these states of sickness. So one example I have is if you've ever carb loaded for a race, right? You're eating carbs to prepare for that race or that game because that that's going to be good when the time comes. Same thing for gut health, right? Like we want to gear the body up with prebiotics and probiotics so that when we do get sick, the immune system is ready. It's ready to fight, okay? All right. I think we're good there. Okay, another really good slide to screenshot if you have the ability to. There's tons of nutrients, like I said, that support a healthy gut, healthy immune system, but these are the top high-level takeaways. So the first one is protein. I really hope I'm not the first nutritionist to tell you to eat more protein. If I am, good for me. But you want to make sure you're getting enough protein because protein is the building block of antibodies. So that's what's going to actually fight the infection. My recommendation would be anywhere from 15 to 30 grams per meal or snack. The next is vitamin C, really powerful antioxidant. So you find this in things like red bell peppers, oranges, citrus fruits. And if you are, like I said, not preparing to be sick, hopefully you're never preparing to be sick, but if you do prepare for travel or something where you might get sick, 1 to 2 servings per day is a good rule of thumb. The next is vitamin D. So if you're not traveling somewhere that's sunny, if you're not privileged enough to travel somewhere over the holidays with some nice warm weather, vitamin D is something that you should consider supplementing with or, eating foods that are high in vitamin D or mostly oily fishes. So supplementation is typically the easiest option that I've found. And then the last two, zinc. This is going to help support immune cells. Whole food sources are typically best, like me and Christina say, food first, supplement second. And lastly, we've got omega-3 fatty acids. You can find this in things like oily fish as well. Supplements are really great. The recommendation here would be to try to have oily fish maybe 2 to 3 times per week. But these are really the high-level immune fighting foods that are going to help protect the body from infection. So really think about storing up on these over the holidays. All right, just another opportunity for you to screenshot this. What I will say about these immune boosting foods is it's really wise if you can take that recommendation I mentioned earlier to just rotate these foods. Like if you're looking at it and you're like, okay, I love bell peppers, I'm going to eat those and only those, right? Because it's on this sheet. I would give you a thumbs up, but the way to get a gold star is to eat at least one per day and then rotate so that you're getting that diversity, right? The diversity is key here. Hopefully, if you walk away with one thing from this presentation is that immune health is gut health. So eating for a healthy gut is going to inevitably strengthen your immune system. And then just a few travel tips. If you are traveling, out of state, out of the country, to stay healthy, the first is hydrate. So try to avoid caffeinated drinks while you're traveling. Sugary drinks can also increase dehydration, which is going to help, or excuse me, it's going to decrease your ability to fight off infection if it does come. Pack snacks. Oh my gosh. That's like my favorite thing to tell people. Just bring your own snacks. It's so expensive in the airports. And also the food can be pretty junky. So on the next slide, I'll show you, you can screenshot. I have a ton of snack recommendations for you guys. The next is to just try to keep your routine as much as you can. So this goes back to that stress piece. If you get off your routine in terms of, sleep, training, eating, your body's going to be confused. And that confusion can lead to stress in the body, which is going to weaken the immune system. So it's all a delicate balance. And I don't want you to get stressed about trying to keep your routine, right? That's not what we want. It's kind of funny and inevitable at times, but just wanting to guard you with the knowledge to just try to keep your routine as much as you can. The next one, avoid germs. That's also sometimes out of our control, but we can do our best by hydrating, packing snacks, keeping our routine. And if necessary, wearing a mask if you feel like it would help you with exposure, depending on where you are. And then the last one, try to keep your body moving. I don't think you guys really struggle with that, so we can move on from that. But just keeping your muscles moving. And then here's some snack ideas. Feel free, screenshot this or just eyeball it, see some things that you really like on there that you're like, oh, I could do that. So if you are gearing up for a travel, and this applies to when, if you travel when you're in season too, like these are really good options for you to have. We typically want to have a carbohydrate and a protein for that balanced blood sugar and also just the hydration as well. So hopefully you got a chance to screenshot. And then, yeah, I'll give it back to Christina to wrap up on sleep, and then I'll finish with just a high level overview.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go back to this just briefly because it is such a good slide. And like insert your favorite thing too. Like, if you've like Nick sticks or chomps, I even say, going to travel snacks, things that you could pack, you're only as good as your gear. And that's what I always say. So if you haven't invested in like a little, thermal container pack or something like that, absolutely do that. You can also get bone broth in little packets so that you can carry that. I always have it in my bag because you can get hot water anywhere. So you can get that at the airports. You could travel with your own little collagen protein packets to dump that in yogurt. So there's these ways to, as Ryan was talking about, boost up or pump up what you're doing on your travel days. And as we've talked about in other things, it's really on you to make sure that you've got the nutrition you need. Now, maybe when you get to that place, there's somebody who's feeding you really well. But on that road, that's kind of where the rubber meets the road. If we're stressed, if we're not sleeping well, and we haven't prepared with our nutrition, that's where you can end up sick like me. I do think it's ironic that I'm sick as I'm giving this talk, but I can tell you exactly, this is my perfect segue. I can tell you why I'm sick. And it was from lack of sleep. I 100% know that that was what was going on here. And we've talked about it before. And I think, in the winter season, and y'all are in Minnesota right now, and I severely know how dark it is and how tired we feel because it's dark at like 4:30. And it just feels really long. But that's part of nature's way of telling us to slow down and to use this time for regenerative processes and recovery processes. So I get it. You're all in different parts of your season. So it depends on what sport you are. And so you're like, oh, this is really cute, Christina. I'm not like, we're practicing all the time or we've got tournaments all the time. But honor what season this is too. And when you go into the holiday season, really capture those moments that you can do some recovery and that you can focus on sleep. I always say, and this is hard when you're young, it's actually hard when you're old like me, but we're called human beings, not human doings all the time. And I use that phrase, and you probably heard it, but how lack of sleep affects athletic performance, it's huge. And it's totally exactly why I got sick. So, as a student athlete, you need your brain function. And so impaired decision making happens, memory, concentration, all of those things with lack of sleep. And then going back to illness, right? So we've got an increased risk of illness and infection when we have lack of sleep. I'll talk about that in the next slide of kind of the why does that happen. And then we have just decreased physical ability, right? So our performance suffers, and we know this, in anything that we're doing, but especially our sports, and just being sport smart, like game ready, game awareness. Our tactical performance goes down when we have less sleep as well. And then altered mood, which we all know the game is won a lot in our heads. So if we're out of our heads because we're tired, this is obviously something that's going to affect our performance. So the sleep and the immune function, we talked about this. If you came to the sleep session, which we had a while back, we talked about how sleep and immune function works. Then I don't need to tell you that most of us are lacking the type of sleep that we need. At your guys' age, you honestly need anywhere between 8 and 10 hours, which sounds really aspirational sometimes, but that's where you're supposed to be. So the risk of an upper respiratory tract infection actually increases with the more exercise that you have in the training. And I'm just coming off of my training cycle too. And I ran a really big race that was like 17 hours. And then I didn't get a lot of sleep. And here we are. So I'm this slide. This is exactly what happened. So what I'm doing now is I'm like putting myself in grandma mode, and I'm going to bed like every night. Well, not tonight, but most nights between 8 and 9 o'clock, and really trying to maximize my immune's response, because cytokines, which are this type of protein that targets infection and inflammation, are creating an immune response. Well, these important cytokines are produced and released during sleep. So if you're not getting the sleep, it's really a double whammy on the things that help your body recover and keep a happy and healthy immune system. So priorities for staying healthy. Now, if you're trying not to get sick, I can't say over exercising because sometimes training cycles are really hard. But if you're in a hard training cycle, really prioritizing sleep as well. And that's your job, right? Your job right now is student sleep athletics most of the time. And so definitely avoid over or under eating nutrient dense foods that Ryan talked about to build a healthy gut, working on, maintaining proper hygiene, right? Just wash your hands. It's so simple. It literally is a simple thing. We have so much going on, and we're touching things, then we're putting our fingers up our nose, and we're not even thinking about it or touching our eyes. And this is how we're really just spreading it. And just being really mindful of just like simple hygiene things that can make a world of difference in whether you get sick or not. Um, and then other things we already talked about. If you're already sick, it is really important to rest and recover, to be mindful if you're hungry or not hungry, whether you're eating. Focus on those immune boosting foods that Ryan talked about. And if you are taking antibiotics or you just took antibiotics, it is really important to think about not only eating the foods that are fermented foods and things high in fiber, but you really need a probiotic. There's really no great way to get your gut health going again without doing like collagen peptides, maybe even glutamine, which is great for gut health, and then also a probiotic, because honestly, that's always the thing. If you take it, it's great. It helps you feel healthy, but you've kind of wiped out your good defense barrier for the future. So now we've got to build up that army again, and we got to try to do it as quickly as possible. All right. Here we are already at the thank you. I did promise that we would do a shorter talk and more Q&A today. So I'm going to go, I'm going to pull up the chat right now because we covered a lot of things really quickly. But if you have questions around exact supplements or types or exact brands with foods that we talked about,